Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel where today we are doing a full-length, non-spoilery review of The Future of Another Timeline by Annalee Newitz. So this book is a adult science fiction standalone, and it is dealing with time travel. And in it we are following two different perspectives. The first is Tess. And Tess is from the year 2022, but she has been busy traveling back to the year 1893, I believe, in Chicago for the World Exposition, Columbian Exposition that is going to happen. So one of the things that she has been working for her entire life on is trying to figure out if she can go back in time and change the timeline enough to have a completely different future for herself when she goes forward. And she thinks she's finally figured out how to do that, and she is all set to go ahead and make some changes that she hopes will make for a better world when she goes forward. And then we are also following Beth. And Beth is a teenager in the year 1992, and she is very much into the punk rock scene. She and her friends go to a concert, and by the end of the night, there's a dead body in the back seat of her friend's car, and they have to figure out what to do with it. And of course, these two perspectives do intertwine as the story goes on, and the story goes from there. There are content warnings for this particular book, most notably domestic abuse and sexual assault. So we are going to go ahead and jump right in with the world building. And I think that the world building of this book was decently well done. So we have two primary settings for this book, the Columbian Exposition in 1893 and then the punk rock scene in LA in 1992. Now, I thought it was well done, well enough, but honestly, I don't really know anything about those time periods or those particular moments in history, so I don't really know. I do know that this is an alternate timeline that Tess and Beth are living in, like from our own. So there are things that match up to our time and things that are different. But I couldn't tell you what they are because honestly, like I said, I don't know those time periods well enough. And honestly, I will admit those time periods don't really do anything for me. I thought the World Exposition was a little bit more interesting, but even still, it wasn't my favorite, like, time period to choose. So, I thought it was decently well done, but I am not an expert by any stretch. I loved, though, that Annalee Newitz actually includes an appendix at the back that does cite a lot of the real people and events that they used in this story and took inspiration from. And they talk a little bit about how they changed some of those things to fit within this world. I thought that that was very cool. I was very appreciative as I was reading through that. And then the other main world building thing that we have to deal with is that time travel. And I thought that this was fascinating because basically there's these 5 machines around the world, and nobody knows how they came to be. We don't know if somebody built them long ago or they just formed from nature. We don't know, and we also don't have any instruction manuals. So everything we have learned about how to operate and deal with time travel is been trial and error. And I love that we're still exploring how to do things with the time travel. It's very scientific exploration kind of thing. And it's hammered home even further because Tess and the group that Tess is associated with are, generally speaking, scientists. So they're trying to figure out a lot of the different things going on with these machines. And I found the time travel part to be very interesting in and of itself, like where these machines came from and everything. It felt very different to me than a lot of what I've read of time travel, but also just this whole scientific exploration, I just really, really appreciated it. So I thought that the world building was just very interesting. So let's move into talking about our characters. And the first character is Tess, and I found Tess to be fine. I understood her. I understood her motivations. I just didn't really like love her or feel any real connection. Like, I thought she did well enough going through the story, and like I said, I understood her motivations. So, I mean, that's all I can really ask for from a character, but I did miss that like connection to those characters because there was nothing there for me. And speaking of no connections, let's talk about Beth. And Beth was a whole lot of shrug, honestly. I understood why she was making the choices, but I didn't like them. I didn't agree with them, but also like they weren't bad enough that I was like yelling at the book. Like it didn't incite any feelings for me. I just didn't like I on one level could understand it, but it's so different from what I would choose that it was a little bit hard to like really connect to those choices. And part of it is just like it might have just been that I really didn't like Beth's storyline, which we'll talk about in a moment. But again, this is a character I felt absolutely no connection about. I honestly didn't even like, whereas Tess, I was just like, not my favorite, but fine. Beth, I'm like, I just got nothing. I have nothing for this character. And everyone else was fine. There was nothing I found to be truly amazing about these characters. I didn't feel any connection to them, but I think that it worked well enough for the plot that we were trying to get through. So let's talk about that plot. I really, really liked Tess's plot line because I thought it was interesting to look at what you need to do to be able to change your past to have a different future. Like that was just a really interesting conversation within this book. And of course, once she figured out how to do it, then came the question of like, what's my plan? How am I going to put this into practice? I know big picture what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know any of the specifics. What am I doing here? And I thought that that was incredibly interesting, especially as like she tries some things and like it didn't really work, and so now we have to adjust. So I found all of that to be just utterly fascinating. However, with Beth's storyline, I got to the end of this book. I read it and I was just not really into it. And I got to the end of the book and I'm not entirely certain what the point of Beth's plotline is. So I could only come up with two possibilities, really. And the first is that maybe because Tess knows who Beth is and is like knows Beth's story and actually does go back in time to try to change Beth's future as well. And like I was sitting here to be like, is this supposed to give us more background on Tess and how she used the scene that she used to belong in, and like the impact that Beth had on like what are we doing here? Is this just Tess's background, like kind of hidden a little bit, but really Tess is supposed to be giving us background on Tess? Or is this really trying to like say something about choices and the impact you can have on your future by the choices you make now? I don't really know. Because I don't think either way it did it very well. Because if we were trying to say something about Tess's background, I don't think we needed a full-blown second main plot to do that. And if we were trying to say something about like choices or time travel, or basically anything, I didn't get it. So I don't think it's there. So for me, what I found is that the payoff just wasn't worth the effort of reading this second storyline. Now, again, as I was reading it, I didn't really think it was bad. I just didn't know I just didn't love it, and I didn't know what the point was. And it did, to some extent, slow down my reading because I just didn't love going to Beth's chapters. So I'm not convinced that Beth's storyline was necessary, honestly. And then the ending I did find to be very, very rushed. I feel like we were trying to set up what happens afterwards, but it didn't quite work. It was just a little bit too rushed. I think that if we had had maybe an extra chapter to kind of actually explore things a little bit, I might have been better, but it didn't really work for me. Overall, I still really like the plot. I just had some issues with some of the pieces. And then style, structure, and pacing. Honestly, dual perspectives. It's a dual perspective story, and the pacing is medium to medium fast, and that's like all I have to say about that. So overall, I did have some nitpicky things that I did not necessarily love about this book, but honestly, as I was reading it, I found it to be very enjoyable. It wasn't until I sat down to start writing this review that I started noticing some of the holes of this particular book. But as I was reading it, I did find it enjoyable, and like I said, I really especially liked the time travel in this particular book. And I ended up giving it 4.25 stars. So comment down below, let me know if you've read this, if you're interested in reading it, let me know all the things. But that is all I have. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!